Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining us. We are back today for another session of our Facebook Live. We're going to talk about some really cool, interesting topics. This is an exciting week for us because our book came out in the market. Our publishers, HarperOne in the US and Simon & Schuster in UK have been incredible, and it's been such an amazing journey. We're very, very, very proud of this book.
We are.
It's based on our research and our work in Loma Linda and other hospitals that we've been to with the patient population. We're very fortunate to have endorsements from some of the most incredibly active, intelligent, and caring scientists and agents of change. People like Dr. Colin Campbell, Dr. Furman, Dan Buettner, who's been amazing. We have endorsements from Dr. David Katz, who I'm a big fan of, Dr. Dean Ornish, and several others who are fighting the good fight to disperse the right information, the correct information about science and health to everybody. And as we've mentioned it before, every penny coming from the profits of this book will actually go back to the community, because we know that health starts there. And to that end, Dean and I have created an initiative where we will set up brain health workshops, talk about brain health, Alzheimer's disease prevention, and stroke, Parkinson's disease, all of the neurodegenerative diseases of the brain. So go ahead and buy your copy, give it to your family, give it to your communities, whoever you think will benefit from it, and you'll help other communities as well.
Correct. To us, the topic that we're talking about is extremely important, and it's fun too. We hear about it all the time in our clinic, about stress. Stress is everywhere. Everybody has some form of stress, and there's a lot of myth around stress.
Yes.
But it's really important to kind of talk about the topic and how it affects you, how you can truly affect it, and as something unusual, how you can use stress to your benefit. That's actually something that's never spoken about, and we wanted to actually do what I call mental jujitsu, kind of turn the picture around, give the language, the positive language, and not just language, the tools to truly make a difference in that fight against stress. So first things, a couple of myths. In our book, we've written extensively and in detail, and I think in fun language around the topic, and empowering language, how you can personalize it. Here we'll talk in generalities and also some of the myths that are often brought up. One of the big myths is that stress is always bad. So what do we think? Is stress always bad?
I don't know, tell us.
Yeah, what do you think? Is stress always bad? Well, not truly, not so. There are different kinds of stress. Language is limiting, and language is important because we actually use that language to create emotions for ourselves. If you keep saying certain kinds of words, there's been studies. People actually develop the emotions that are linked to it, even if there's no reality behind it. So there are different kinds of stress. Today, 3 patients, we talked about stress, and there are stresses that you don't have control over, doesn't serve your purpose. In fact, it's not even driven by you. It's not time-bound, it's chronic, and it becomes overwhelming, destructive, and it actually damages the brain. But the kind of stress that you have control over, that has purpose, that is driven by your purpose, and it's time-bound, and there's a reward at the end, that can actually be incredibly constructive.
So give us an example of what do you mean? The stress that is your own stress, what does that mean?
I mean, imagine how many years of schooling have we done? Yeah, I mean,
we're still doing it.
Some friends say that
I'm still in school.
Exactly, me too. And that can be quite stressful. And right now, actually, a 75-year-old patient of mine today, she said, I love going, I used to love going to school. I said, well, there it is. That's your mental activity. It's not going to be Sudoku. I will be sued by a Sudoku company one of these days soon.
So Dean has this statement that he almost always uses during talks and in clinics. And he goes, if you make me play Sudoku, I'll get depression.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sudoku is just not me. It's not my game at all.
And it's not anything to do with Sudoku. It's about my personal proclivities, my personal tendencies. But she wanted to go, she liked going to class, so there are senior classes in most colleges, in most community centers now, and it's becoming a popular thing. So we have a brochure, I showed her a brochure in a local college that has art classes for seniors.
Yeah, yeah.
Another one that has philosophy classes for seniors. So that kind of stress, it's going to be challenging. Taking a class at 75 or at any age is going to be challenging, but it's something you chose, and it has direction, it's time bound, there's a lot of fun around it. That kind of stress is growing the brain. It's not damaging the brain. The cortisol hormone that we'll talk about soon is not going to be one of destruction. You will actually stimulate dopamine and other neurotransmitters that build the brain, nerve growth factors.
Absolutely.
So that's the idea of good stress and bad stress. Some people call that, you can name it anything you want.
Some people call it challenge too.
Challenge,
right?
yeah, but I like to use the word stress
Right.
so I can change the concept and steal it away from the negative world.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The other myth is that stress is the same for everyone. It's not. We've known people that the slightest bit of stress just overwhelms them. That has to do with the language they're used to, and other factors. I don't want to simplify it. There are many factors. So stress is different for different people. Some people can withstand tremendous amount of stress,
Yes.
whereas others can't. Another myth is stress is meditation. Meditation is the only way to control stress. Is that true?
Oh, goodness gracious, no. I'm actually going to be very transparent here. I cannot meditate. I find it very difficult to actually sit down and shut my mind. And I'm a neurologist. I talk about stress management. I talk about meditation all the time. Everybody knows that I've actually given it my all
She
to
has.
be able to just turn off my brain for even a couple of minutes to relieve the stress, but I just can't.
Yeah.
And so that's the purpose of this statement. I think meditation is different for different people.
It is. And there are so many different ways, and we actually have gone into detail how to personalize it to your personality, to your character. There are no symptoms. If there are no symptoms, there's no stress. That's not true. Often, stress hides itself behind or referred pain, referred behavior, and it manifests in unusual ways. So there are a lot of people that might not actually feel stressed by that name or by that concept, but it actually affects them.
Absolutely.
So being a little self-aware of yourself and any changes is extremely important. The next stress myth we wanted to talk about was stress is most damaging to your heart. It's not. Stress comes from your brain, and stress affects your brain. This incredible organ that works all the time is affected by stress and how you perceive stress, and the hormones that are released are most influential to the brain and affect the brain the most. So being aware that your brain, the anxiety levels, the depression, all these other diseases that come about as a result of stress are real. The relationship between stress and Alzheimer's is extremely real.
And we'll talk about that in detail a little bit later.
The last one, we're not going to go into more detail, is meditate long period. You have to meditate long periods of time in order to benefit, or any version of it. And that's not true. In our own life, in our own home, our children even, we've actually instituted, we like a certain type of meditation.
Yeah.
It's called mindful breathing. I'm not going to do it here. This will be the most awkward live stream.
Facebook session.
Close your eyes and take a deep breath and
Let's
relax
do
the
that.
muscles. Yeah, that we
Maybe
won't do
some
that.
other time.
But you can read the book.
Yeah.
But we do that, and our own children have instituted. Our daughter, who is also our
She's the
videographer,
videographer today,
and also
so
my
thank you,
makeup
Sophie.
artist. Which if you see the abnormality, it's because of her makeup
Or
artist.
the fact that you look so good is because of her, right?
Yeah, well,
Thank
you're
you,
kind.
Sophie.
But you don't have to meditate for long periods. What I do is 5 minutes of this mindful breathing and relaxation. 3 times a day now. But I started at 1 time a day, then twice a day, then 3 times a day, or whenever I do feel the experience, awareness, being aware of my own situation, or before a meeting, or before. It is the most amazing thing. When I was at NIH, I would have laughed at this. I'm not laughing at it. This is actually life-changing. So some of the methodology and techniques we have here, so we'll talk about it more in the book and in the future as well.
Yeah, so we thought it would be interesting and exciting to actually read an excerpt of the book from the stress chapter to discuss this with you guys. I'm going to go ahead and read a page that talks about how stress negatively affects our brain and what are the ways that it actually affects our brain. And so the first one is anxiety and depression. When stress is uncontrolled and you lose that control over a situation, your brain actually starts having imbalance in the neurochemicals. So you have actually imbalance in serotonin production, and it literally eats your brain away and causes depression. And so the anxiety and depression that comes from a stressful situation needs to be identified very early in any situation. The second way that it affects the brain is by affecting the immune function. Yeah. So your brain essentially uses certain immune cells to keep away disease, to keep it healthy. And when there's a lot of stress, those immune cells or the white blood cells, they don't function properly.
The mechanism is what's called the neuroendocrine axis in the hypothalamus. So your stress levels release certain hormones and cortisol, which affects your hypothalamus and your and that affects your endocrine system, and that affects your immune system.
Absolutely.
And that's why higher cancer rates in those who have stress, higher, you name it, all the diseases.
Absolutely. The other way that stress affects our brain is by causing impaired attention. So when our cortisol levels and epinephrine levels are high during any stressful situation, it actually impairs the growth of neurons, especially in the frontal lobe, the area of the brain that controls judgment and personality and decision making. And this gets affected quite a bit, and that's why when you're under a lot of stress, it's very difficult to actually pay attention to things, and forgetfulness starts.
Yeah, we were talking yesterday. You were doing an exam, and we were talking about the fact that one was sleep, which actually then, when you're taking an exam, you have to have breadth and depth. So that's critical that we be aware of that. That whenever you have anything that affects your ability to dive into concepts and to go deep into concepts, it's going to affect your attention and your ability to focus on things. So stress affects attention, which affects memory, which affects all the other concepts as well. So.
Absolutely. So the other way that the brain gets damaged during a stressful situation is by increased inflammation. Uncontrolled stress can actually trigger a cascade of chemical reactions in the brain that disrupts the blood vessels, the neurons, and structurally damages the brain.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, you get a lot of byproducts, oxidative byproducts, and this is basically, essentially the garbage, and the brain has a very hard time removing that over a long period of time, and that's how it affects your brain. Stress can literally shrink your brain. There have been studies where they have assessed stress in different populations, and the ones that have had very high uncontrolled stress for a very long time during their life, they actually had atrophy, which is a term used for brain shrinkage.
Right.
And there was this one study at McGill University, and they found that people with high levels of cortisol, which is a hormone that is secreted during stressful situation, had 14% reduction in the size of their hippocampus, these areas of the brain that are responsible for memory making.
Exactly.
They've also studied the deposition of beta amyloid protein. It's that bad protein that has been associated with Alzheimer's disease. And when there's constant stress and high levels of stress, there's increased beta amyloid protein depositions. Uncontrolled stress can actually alter our genes as well. We were talking about this the other day.
Yeah, the epigenetics.
The concept of epigenetics. It's such a cool concept. So what happens is that our environment, what we do on a regular basis, actually changes the structures of our genes in
Now,
a way.
Structure and which part of the genes are turned on and which part of the genes are turned off.
So gene expression essentially.
Correct, yeah.
And stress has been shown to actually lower the growth of new cells, and it also impairs the neuroplasticity, or the ability of the brain cells to actually cope and adapt with a stressful situation. Other than that, you have high heart rate and blood pressure rate, which inadvertently affects healthy habits and brain health in general.
We've gone into detail as far as not just the science, but how to apply it and how to personalize it, because we think it's one of the most important topics. Stress is everywhere, it's ubiquitous, everybody feels it, everybody experiences it in different degrees. But at any degree, if you don't have control over it, you haven't named it, you haven't defined it well, and what goes into creating stress in your life, which is the planning component, and what needs to what resources you have to bring to change that situation. The stress is the thing that will eat away at your brain.
Absolutely.
And at the outcome of that, which is dementia, Alzheimer's, depression, all of these things are significantly affected by it. So we are most proud of, one of the chapters that we're most proud of is stress, and how we think we can affect communities to change their conversation with this concept of stress.
Now let's spend a couple
Change
of
the
minutes.
narrative. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's talk a little bit about alternatives to the typical way of getting rid of stress. So whenever somebody talks about stress, the word that immediately comes to mind is meditation.
Correct.
And when people think of meditation, you always think about sitting cross-legged on the ground,
Eyes closed.
eyes closed, taking
Fingers.
deep breaths. Yeah, fingers. What is this called? Some position anyway. I'll look into it. And breathing in and breathing out. That doesn't really work with a lot of people, and we've worked with multiple communities from different cultural backgrounds, and sometimes you can't really push this cookie cutter solution to it. So what are some of the ways that we can get rid of stress without meditation?
Ironically, walking. So for those who are a little hyper, like myself and yourself and our kids, we're a little hyper. So for me, sitting in one place, although the mindful breathing is quite helpful, 5 minutes, but long walks with a certain cadence, with music or with a certain rhythm, is incredibly meditative and relaxing and focusing, especially if you have that in mind, that the job of this walk is to relax me, to bring me to focus. That serves the best purpose. In fact, one of the statements I always say when they come to the clinic is, I said, do you exercise? And they say, I walk the neighborhood. And what did I say? What do I always say?
That's very nice, but that's meditation.
Yes.
That's not exercise.
That's not exercise. So we have to delineate between those two concepts.
Right.
But a nice walk with meditation in mind, with a cadence, with relaxing music or mantra or a relaxing thought, is the best thing you can do.
For me, it's always music. I been listening to music. I come from a musical family, and whenever I listen to something that is familiar, that I associate with good memories, whether it's from my family or friends sitting around, that just brings so much peace to me.
Correct, but not when I play guitar. It's not relaxing. So yeah, me listening to her singing is absolutely the most relaxing thing in the planet. Absolutely.
You don't give yourself enough credit. You play well. But in any case, so things like that, walking, yoga. Yoga is quite relaxing. One of our friends does yoga on a regular basis, and she says that's when she completely disconnects with everything around her.
Correct.
And gets in that zone, and she relaxes, whether it's for 5 minutes or for 50 minutes.
So I think so that we let them get into the more details themselves. It's critical that you read this chapter in a way that's actually yours. This whole point, the point of this entire book is personalization.
Absolutely.
It's personalized medicine. So it's not just about meditation or all these other techniques that we talk about and the science behind it. How do those factors, such as the science, the limitations, the characteristics, and the exercises, fit with your personality? Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the critical thing. The same is true for all the other sections in the book. But for stress, that's critical, because it's something that's going to be with you for the rest of your life. And again, I repeat, it's mental jujitsu, changing the narrative, changing the language around stress so that it doesn't appear, it becomes constructive and not destructive.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a beautiful statement. So with that, let's go and see if our friends have any questions for us, and please keep posting if you have. So the first question that I actually got, one of the questions that I got was a gentleman texted us and said he actually enjoys being around family, and that's his way of coping with stress.
Right.
And that's perfect. I think one of the most important things for our brain health is awareness, knowing what is good and what is not good, knowing what is helpful and not helpful. If you feel that you feel more relaxed in a particular situation, that's it. That's the best one.
Correct.
And surrounding oneself with loved ones and family
Correct.
who are supportive and caring is probably the best way to deal with
Not
stress.
all of them are always that relaxing person. Identify and choose wisely.
Exactly.
I think today we said we're going to make it a shorter session, so I think we've given enough information there.
Absolutely. So thank you so much again for being with us. We would be happy to answer any questions that you may have later on as well. Again, we want to end the talk by saying, please support the cause. All of the monies go back to the communities for brain health workshops and bringing awareness about Alzheimer's and other neurodegenerative disease of the brain. There's so much hope for this disease and for so many others, and it starts at home in the communities with prevention. So
Correct.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Bye.